Resident Evil has had many different kinds of crossovers over the years, appearances in fighting games, card games, side-scrolling arcade games, snowboarding games, but if there's one territory we can all agree that the franchise will likely never cross into, it's monster collecting and battling RPGs. Hell, the fact that we even have the smallest representation of Biohazard in Super Smash Bros. At all would have been a total fantasy even just a few years ago. But getting back to the point, I love Resident Evil, you probably love Resident Evil if you're watching a video on this channel, I love Pokémon, and you're at least aware of what Pokémon is because you live in the 21st century. Now let's mash them together. This is Sai for First Aid Spray, and this is Resident Evil B.O.W.s reimagined as Pokémon. Now, from the off, it's worth saying that this video is going to be wacky. I mean, conceptually, it's already pretty strange. So we're throwing logic out of the window somewhat and inviting a little bit of non-canon back into the warmth for a spell to make this the best that it can be. With that being said, let's start with something rather major, the Nemesis. In terms of stats, Nemesis is incredibly versatile. The dude's a tank. Powerful, unstoppable, and shockingly quick for a man of his stature. He's also got the largest arsenal imaginable, his fists, his tentacles, even picking up rocket launchers and such, which we try to demonstrate in his move pool. Whilst it might be easy to give the dark type to any number of awful creatures from Resident Evil, the nightmarish glare and total fixation on the murder of his target means that Nemesis truly earns it. And don't even question the fact that this guy would be a pseudo-legendary. But all the best Pokémon are part of an evolutionary line, and like other tyrants before him, Nemesis is prone to a little bit of mutation. The OG final form of Nemesis is classic, but for this video we're handpicking something from the RE3 remake, Nemesis Form 2. This four-legged beast gives Nemesis a need for speed, adding moves like Extreme Speed into his arsenal. His new mobility grants him the ability Speed Boost, so essentially he's just going to be getting faster and faster and faster. Now, this is where what I mentioned earlier about canon is going to come into it. Try not to have PTSD-style flashbacks, those of you who detested Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, but cast your minds back to a particularly divisive mission in the game which sees the USS Wolfpack battling against the very base form of Nemesis, parasites that, once implanted into a tyrant, begin the transformation into the famous Stars Stalker. Yep, that's right, we're adding a baby form to this one. As with all babies in Pokémon, they might not offer much by themselves, but nurturing your Nemesis from its adolescent stages might just make the thing a little more loyal to you, and more intent on carrying out its mission of ruining Jill Valentine's Day. Our next one is pretty straightforward. Pokémon itself has an abundance of anthropomorphic plants, and Resident Evil has had many of these too. Let's go back to the original PS1 version of Resident Evil 2 for our stage 1 to start with, and I'm talking about Plant 43, aka Ivy. They're plants, so they're grass type, and they have the ability to poison you, so duh, they're also poison. In the game, they're entirely stationary, acting more like an obstacle in your path, and thus expect them to have very little speed, but make up for it elsewhere with a nasty moveset that would likely include Vine Whip, Wrap, Acid, and a number of Arena Trap moves. In fact, Arena Trap itself would be a decent ability, or perhaps Poison Heal to denote how the creatures eventually get stronger in Resident Evil 2 when they come into contact with poisonous gases. Now, the name Plant 43 comes from the fact these creepy little buggers were developed based off of data from a big beefy B.O.W. from the first game, Plant 42. In our little reinvention here, we're going to assume a few things and say that perhaps, given enough time, these little green guys might grow and grow and grow into something that takes up an entire room. Ergo, their evolution would be the massive Plant 42. It doesn't really work any differently, but 42 is much larger and much more powerful.
So much for him, we got to the root of the problem.
While some Pokémon have interesting in-universe origin stories, most just exist. They're part of the world and, like animals in the real world, don't really need much explaining. This can be very much compared to a certain Resident Evil monster we're thinking of, and that monster is El Gigante from RE4, which has about as much backstory as the developers probably just watched Lord of the Rings. All teasing aside, Gigante is a huge brute of a creature and is arguably one of the most iconic fights in the game. This giant rippling mass of muscle would very obviously be a pure fighting type, and honestly it doesn't matter what moves you give it, due to its size it's still gonna rock you hard. A lot of Pokemon evolutions share one key component, which is a size increase, and of course El Gigante isn't the largest B.O.W. in the Resident Evil canon. A logical continuation would be the very similar, yet significantly larger brute Ogremon from RE6. Standing at 30 feet tall, this gives shockingly few Pokemon a height advantage, so bring it on Mega Steelix, Ogreman will karate chop you like yesterday's wet pasta. One of the most popular and endearing animals in Pokemon history, now more so than ever it seems, is Eevee, a symbol of transformation, adaptability, and as the series goes on, sustained momentum. Resident Evil only has one B.O.W. that can truly compare, the MA121 Hunter. Now, stay with me here, I promise this is worth it. Whilst always pretty well loved by fans, Eevee was just one of the original 151. However, the unique concept, great design, and latent potential made sure that Eevee became more than just another Pokemon. The Hunter, similarly, is a symbol of success, so much so that in the Resident Evil universe, it's been spun off into many variations. Are you seeing where I'm going with this now? So starting off with the Hunter Alpha, let's make that just like Eevee, a normal type. Obviously, this beheading happy lizard is a darn sight more worrisome than the adorable little fox in question. Expect moves like Slash, Hone Claws, and hell, throw in Guillotine as the classic OHKO move. Ouch! It's fast and strong, and its ability would be Battle Armor to protect it from critical hits. This is where it gets interesting. The first obvious place to look for Hunter evolutions is the Hunter Gamma, most specifically because the typing is clear. It's based on amphibian DNA and ergo we have our water type. An ideal moveset is pretty straightforward. Lick, Swallow, Chomp and anything else that takes advantage of that massive jaw. Its ability finally would be Storm Drain to power itself up when in contact with water. Evolution number 2, this one looks into the obscure a little more. The Sega Saturn port of the original Resident Evil featured its own non-canon Hunter offshoot called Ticks. These little guys, it appears, were based on arthropod DNA, which makes them, nice and uniquely, a bug-type hunter. With scythes for arms, they're, for all intents and purposes, Scyther, so figuring out a pool of moves is pretty easy, but I went with the ability Dry Skin to increase its health in rain and decrease it when in direct sun, as a nod to the fact that it lives in the caves around the Arclay facility. Rounding them out is the B.O.W. designed by Il Veltro Farfellow, who appeared in Resident Evil Revelations. They look quite similar to your average hunter, except for the fact that they can turn invisible. A nice power like that surely makes them ghost typing, give them a few extra moves based around this, fake out, full swipe, etc., and the ability Infiltrator to sneak around protective barriers, and it will make them stand out in the heat of battle, even when they don't particularly stand out appearance-wise. Get it? That was a invisibility joke. Didn't see that coming, did you? Okay, I'll stop. And that's just a few examples of Resident Evil B.O.W.s reimagined as Pokemon. Let us know what you thought of this bizarre experiment and what else you can think of in terms of evolutionary lines, typing and so on in the comments below. Who knows, maybe there'll be time for a gold and silver version of this list. Subscribe to stay up to date with the podcast and everything else that we do here at First Aid Spray, and as always, have a good week.